front here that would like to take the microphone, I believe. Pastor Ken?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let us pray. We thank you, Lord, for people who answer the call to serve in various capacities throughout our community. We ask your blessing and your protection upon them. We thank you for this gathering of our community to move and advance your will forward. And we ask that what we do and say here honor you. And we thank you for the privilege of being together in the community. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, sir. And if we could do a call to order by doing roll call, please.
You're not going.
Oh, I'm sorry. Off track here. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. And actually, during the moment of silence, I'd like to keep a local gentleman in our prayers. It's Tom Alonzo passed away, and there'll be a celebration of life at the American Legion Post 261, February 26, 2019, from 2 to 7 p.m. here at the Post 261. The Legion service will be at 5 p.m. Thank you very much.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now we can do roll call.
Robert Carnahan.
Here.
Ralph Miller.
Present.
Randall Lemeyer.
Present.
Greg Parker.
Here.
Richard Sharp.
Here.
Julia Vera. Here. John Foreman.
Present.
Jill Murr, Town Administrator. Present. David Austin, Town Attorney.
Present.
Thank you. Public comment on agenda items, if anybody has.
You got introduction of Cedar Lake Police Department, new chaplain.
Pastor Ken, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The chief's gonna, I think, do that.
Oh, I saw his name. Okay, thank you very much, Chief. If you would like to make your introduction.
As you're aware, the Cedar Lake Police Department has a chaplain program in place, has for many, many years. Father John has been our primary chaplain for the last couple of those years. We are adding an additional chaplain, and we're very honored to have Pastor Ken as a new Cedar Lake Police Department chaplain.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Pastor Ken, thank you for stepping up and welcome. You're very much welcome.
Thank you.
Do you want to get a picture of him again?
I did as he was walking away. Thank you very much. Okay, now moving into public comment regarding the agenda items. Do we have anybody that would like to comment on agenda items, public comment? Going once, twice. Public comment at this moment is closed. Now for the consent agenda, item number 1, minutes of the February 15th, 2019 meeting. Number 2, claims, all town funds, $252,597.28. Wastewater operating, $245,425.77. Water utility, $67,276.04. Stormwater, $36,275.09. 2017 RDA-B construction, $3,776.37. And last but not least, payroll, February 7th, 2019, $247,223.79. Item 3, January 1 through 31, the 2019 manual entries, as well as number 4, donations, Casey's in contribution, 2 25-pound boxes of candy. And number 5, tag day requests, April 6th through April 26th, 2019. And it shows the attachment. Jill, do you have those handy?
On page 5 of your packet
Okay.
is the 2019 tag day schedule.
Very good. I'll just run through the list quickly, starting in April, American Legion Auxiliary Unit. The the VIPs are second. In May, we've got Knights of Columbus. Since June, the Cedar Lake Lions. Looks like July is the Cedar Lake Girls softball, as well as the Cedar Lake Chamber towards the end of the month. Hanover Central Varsity Palms, Hanover Central JV dance team in September, AMVETS Post 15 in September, as well as the FOP Fraternal Order of Police.
And those blank spots are available,
Yes,
five
they
of
are.
them. So we've got 5 open spots there.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have a motion to accept and waive the reading of the minutes and accept the consent agenda as listed?
So moved.
That sounded like a Ralph to me. Do we have a second?
Second.
And Mr. Rick Sharp is a second. Roll call, please.
Robert
Question?
Carnahan?
Motion was Ralph?
No, question.
Yes, question.
I noticed that we've got on our claims, we paid GMI a little over $65,000 for the month. We signed a 6-year contract. Does either Jennifer or June know when that contract ends?
2021 or 2022.
Okay.
We signed it
Because
in
we
15.
we saved a great deal of money. We'd have been charging our residents $20 now a month instead of the 17. So, and they signed a 6-year contract with us, and I never heard of them until we opened it up for bid.
Very good. Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the table.
Robert Carnahan?
Yes.
Greg Parker?
Yes.
Ralph Miller?
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer?
Yes.
Richard Sharp?
Yes.
Julie Rivera?
Yes.
John Foreman?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Ordinances and resolutions. Ordinance number 1315, Fire Pension Board. First reading was February 5th. Therefore, this motion would be for adoption once it's read.
Ordinance number 1315, an ordinance establishing a fire pension board for the town of Cedar Lake, Lake County, Indiana, 1977 firefighters pension and disability fund, repealing all ordinances and town code provisions or parts thereof in conflict herewith and all matters related thereto.
Thank you. And would anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 1315.
I'll second.
Motion by Randy Niemeyer, second by Julie Rivera. Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan?
Yes.
Greg Parker?
Yes.
Ralph Miller?
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer?
Yes.
Richard Sharp?
Yes.
Julie Rivera?
Yes.
John Foreman?
Yes. Motion carries 7-0. Item number 2, ordinance number 1317, Rago Public Way Vacation. The first reading was February 5th, 2019, so again, it would be for adoption.
Ordinance number 1317, an ordinance vacating a public way alley in the town of Cedar Lake, Lake County, Indiana, and all matters related thereto.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for ordinance 1317, please?
I'll make a motion. for-
Motion by Julie for adoption.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Rick. Roll call, please.
Question.
Yes, sir.
I've looked this over and it just seems like it doesn't go anywhere. I asked the question before, why was it there in the first place? And I got no answer, but at least I guess it'll go on the tax roll and we'll start collecting some tax money for it.
Bob, there is an answer.
All right.
Sorry you didn't get that the last time. This is an old subdivision that had the walkway easement in it, like so many of our old subdivisions in the lake area have. And that's how it ended up this way. It's on an old plat.
And it doesn't go to the lake or anything.
It
It's
does
just,
not. It
All right.
doesn't.
Okay, thank you. We have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan?
yes.
Greg Parker?
Yes.
Ralph Miller?
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer?
Yes.
Richard Sharp?
Yes.
Julie Rivera?
Yes.
John Foreman?
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Moving into the plan portion of the agenda for tonight's council meeting. Item number 1, ordinance number 1318, Althoff Birchwood Farms, PUD.
Can you read it?
Well, we have the petitioner here, but should we have had the additional items underneath the ordinance number 1318? Are there other items that need to be under? On my agenda, I'm only seeing,
No, it's the ordinance.
okay,
That's 1318.
or 1318, yes. Okay, thank you very much. We'll let Julie go ahead and read the ordinance, please.
Ordinance number 1318, an ordinance reclassifying certain lands in the town of Cedar Lake, Lake County, Indiana, for zoning purposes and amending town ordinance number 496, being an ordinance replacing zoning ordinance number 278 entitled Cedar Lake, Indiana zoning ordinance, passed and adopted by the Board of Trustees of the town of Cedar Lake, Indiana, and all amendments passed subsequent thereto, repealing zoning ordinance number 278, all amendments thereto, and all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, establishing new comprehensive zoning regulations for the town of Cedar Lake, and providing for the administration, enforcement, and amendment thereof in accordance with the provisions of the Indiana state statutes. Passed by the Town Council of the town of Cedar Lake, Lake County, Indiana, the 13th day of December, 1989, and all amendments passed subsequent thereto.
Thank you. Mr. Austin, do we need to have petitioner comments, public comment, anything like that?
You can ask the representative if you would like. That's your call.
Very fine.
Public hearing has been held at the Plan Commission.
That's
as you know.
that's correct. Did you want to mention to the council anything about your PUD?
Sure. I'm just kind of giving you some highlights of our PUD. My name is Jeff Yatsko with Old Clough Homes. Before you is Birchwood Farms. This was previously given a favorable recommendation by the Plan Commission. We're here tonight to seek approval for the PUD ordinance. This property is about 68 acres. It was recently annexed into the town of Cedar Lake. It's up in the northwest corner. It sits just on the west side of 41, about 700 feet north of 126. So this is just north of Corky's doghouse. This PUD development includes 137 total homes. It's about 2.0 units per acre. This will include 78 single-family estate homes and 59 single-family villa homes. Our single-family villa homes are typically our smaller product, typically a slab product. They are maintenance-free, so that means the grass cutting, the snow removal is all part of the HOA. And just a few highlights of this community. This includes about 20 acres of open space, which is about 25% of the 68 acres. We've got about 13 acres of wooded, undeveloped area on the west side of this community. We plan on enhancing that with trails. We will be under the protection of a conservation easement, so we're not going to be able to do any kind of further development in the future. We also have a playground that will be included for ages 5 to 12. And then as part of the Plan Commission recommendation, we also included a gathering space in the villa area. It was already an open space, but we're going to include some benches and some areas for the villa residents, because the playground's usually in the single-family portion, so we'll have a gathering space in the villa portion, and then we'll have the 13 acres of woods on the west side. So we are definitely excited about this new opportunity in Cedar Lake, and we're hoping for your approval of the PUD tonight.
Very good. Thank you very much. Julie's read the ordinance. The petitioner gave us a brief description. Mr. Austin, would you like to add anything?
May I?
Please.
Thank you. The process has been followed according to your codes and according to law. The recommendation of the Plan Commission was favorable, and it was conditioned upon compliance with the contract, PUD contract or development agreement that is appended. I would recommend that your first motion be to consider and approve that agreement. The second thing that would occur would be the adoption of the ordinance, if you're so inclined to do so tonight. I would note for the record that there are conditions on the zoning district classification approval here. First, and it's our recommendation that these be included in your record. First, that the Birchwood Farms Planned Unit Development Project contract dated, and I presume it would be dated tonight if this were approved. It would be dated whenever it's approved if it's not tonight. That contract presented be a condition, compliance, of course, by the developer and property owner with same. 2, that a copy of the approved minutes of the public meetings of the Plan Commission. That's where all the action and all the information and all the contingencies of approval and favorable recommendation certification were made. Those be appended, and that the developer be required to comply with those conditions. 3, that the zoning district classification amendment be contingent upon compliance by the owner petitioner with all other rules, regulations, requirements, ordinances of the town and state law. And finally, that the consideration of approval be contingent upon payment by the petitioner owner of all fees, costs, and charges incurred by the town related to the application, including all engineering, legal, and related. It would be my recommendation that those conditions be considered as part of any motion that might be made tonight on the ordinance itself.
Very good.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the PUD contract with the contingencies.
We have a motion by Randy
Second.
on the table. Randy Niemeyer the first, Rick Sharp the second. Any other member discussions? Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer.
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes.
Mr. President, I think we need to consider the ordinance now. That was
That's,
just PUD.
that's correct.
Ordinance has one reading. It's a zone map amendatory ordinance under the law, only one reading is required.
Okay.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 1318 with the contingencies made as part of the public record by the town attorney.
Very good.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Randy, second by Julie. Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Since this is unanimous, Mr.
It only needs one reading.
Oh, this only does need one reading. Thank you very much.
John, may I suggest, though, that before the document or the ordinance is executed and attested, that staff review it with Jeff to make certain that all the attachments and the dates and ordinance numbers and the like be properly inserted, that staff is comfortable with that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask Jeff a question?
You may.
A couple of things in looking at this project, the area where it's located, if cars are pulling out to go to the north on 41, it's just over a hill. Is there some sort of traffic mitigation being considered or something to protect the safety of people on 41 and coming out of the subdivision? And my second question is that Althoff itself has not always had the greatest reputation in Cedar Lake as far as the quality of a product. And I just want to make sure that that quality meets the standards of what we're seeing here now in a quality product. So those are my two questions. I suppose one is kind of a comment. So,
Well, to talk about the entrances, so we have had some several discussions with INDOT on our entrances. We do have two. The main entrance, which would be in and out, would be at the south side of our subdivision, which would be towards the top of the hill.
okay.
We will have a second entrance to the north, which will only be right in and right out.
Okay.
And also, INDOT has a turn lane, a center turn lane project that's forthcoming. They told me let 2019 construct 2020, maybe 2021. So actually, by the time we get our north entrance in, when we look at the timing, we would probably be tying into that.
Okay.
So we would then have that center turn lane throughout the whole entire project. So hopefully that would make everything much safer than it is today.
Okay, thank you.
We
And I
can
hope
confirm.
that the quality of the homes that we're building can meet the expectations of the town. So,
I
Yeah,
appreciate
and
that.
I might add that Jeff Yatsko and team worked very closely with our building department and we're in constant contact and worked very well. And I think this will ultimately be a good project for them.
Good luck. Hope everything works well.
thank you.
Item number 2 under plan, ordinance 1319, Lennar Rose Wood Estates, also a PUD.
Council, this is the separate attachment to your packet. Julie,
Okay,
it's the separate piece.
separate piece? Okay.
On the second page.
Is the ordinance in the second portion?
It's in the second portion of the
Second page, 1319. Well, since you're up at the microphone, go ahead, and if you'd like to address the council, you're more than welcome.
My name is Scott Bernard, and I'm here representing Lennar. First of all, we definitely want to take time to thank and really kind of call out staff here. I know we haven't made things easy for staff here over the last few months, and they've done nothing but great to us and trying to work with us to get this thing through. So I'll let you know that it's been a pleasure working with them, and we plan on learning the Indiana way a little bit better than we have. I think it's been kind of just a rough stretch for us. This is our first true development in Northwest Indiana. Most of our stuff has been up on the other side of the border, up in Illinois. We've done a lot of developed lot deals in this particular area, but it's been trying. I know on staff's end, and I just want to say we're going to be much better. So I just wanted to thank them for their patience with us and working with us here over the last couple of weeks to help us kind of usher this thing through. So just wanted to say that, and we're here tonight for. I guess, approval of Fitch Farms, which is Rose Farm Estates. It's 352 units, located basically adjacent to Hanover Central Middle School there, right off 144th Street. It's going to be a total of 121 single-family homes, 85 of what we call the ranch villas. We're in 74 side-load duplex homes, so we call them paravillas, and 72 townhomes. With me tonight, I have basically everyone on our team. I have Tara Tauber, who's an attorney, filling in for Jim tonight. Jim had a medical issue he had to deal with, so Tara's in here tonight to help us out with any of the legal problems that may or may not arise. We have Rich Olson from Gary Weber and Associates. He handled the land plan for us. He created it. And we have Ryan Martin from Mac Consultants, who is here as our engineer. And with that said, I'd like to just listen to what you guys have to have and answer any questions you guys might have.
Very good, thank you. I'd just like to let the entire council know this was vetted pretty heavily at the Plan Commission. And there are some contingencies that fall into this from the Plan Commission meeting. If perhaps, Mr. Austin, if you'd like to bring this up now or.
However you want, John.
Okay, I think it'd be great for the public if they first heard the reading of the ordinance. That way it's taken care of. So Julie, if you could please read the reading of the ordinance.
Ordinance number 1319, an ordinance reclassifying certain lands in the town of Cedar Lake, Lake County, Indiana for zoning purposes and amending town ordinance number 496, being an ordinance replacing zoning ordinance number 278 entitled Cedar Lake, Indiana zoning ordinance passed and adopted by the Board of Trustees of the town of Cedar Lake, Indiana, and all amendments passed subsequent thereto, repealing zoning ordinance number 278, all amendments thereto, and all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, establishing new comprehensive zoning regulations for the town of Cedar Lake, and providing for the administration, enforcement, and amendment thereof, in accordance with the provisions of the Indiana state statutes. Passed by the Town Council of the town of Cedar Lake, Lake County, Indiana, the 13th day of December, 1989, and all amendments passed subsequent thereto.
Thank you. As mentioned, the Plan Commission vetted this quite a lot over the past few months. and it was passed on to the town council as a favorable recommendation with some various contingencies. It was essentially ordinances, typical lots, and the various standards that go along with the different classifications that they brought up earlier. And in addition to that, there were some things added to that I'd like Mr. Austin to cover at this point in time.
Like the previous petition that was before you, this is a planned unit development proposal. It needs to follow our law. There is law in our zoning ordinance concerning that. The project brought to you was vetted, as John indicated, by the Plan Commission in both work study and public meetings, as well as in public hearings. The public hearing was initially conducted January 16th. It was continued to February 6th, and at the conclusion of the public hearing, there was a favorable recommendation by a 4 in favor and 3 opposed vote for the action. The contingencies of approval are recommended to be considered like the last petition that was before you. And that's for a number of reasons, but into the record, I would like to suggest and recommend the following. One, that the developer conform to and comply with the approved plan unit development project contract that is presented by the owner petitioner for the project, and that a copy of same be attached. 2, that there be compliance by the developer owner with all terms and conditions of the town subdivision plat approval process. That is not completed, so a contingency would be for the plat approval to govern what happens here with development. 3, that there be compliance with all conditions of the Plan Commission for its favorable recommendation certification for this zoning district classification, all as identified in detail in the public meeting minutes of the Plan Commission of each of January 16th and February 6th. The record should reflect that the Plan Commission had very detailed contingencies in its February 6th recommendation action, which are incorporated. I also recommend that the public meeting minutes upon approval by the Plan Commission be appended to this ordinance. 4, that there be compliance by the owner and petitioner with the rules, regulations, and requirements for project development in this town, as well as with all town ordinances and state law. And finally, that approval be contingent upon payment by the owner petitioner of all fees, costs, charges incurred by the town related to this application to and through its end disposition, and that would include engineering, legal, and related. Happy to answer any questions about either the contingencies or the document. I think that the planned unit development agreement should be commented on by Mr. Gerard briefly for the highlights rather than me. It's their proposal.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we voluntarily suggested moving forward with this particular project is to basically impose a fee of our own that we pay to the city and building permit. It's $1,000 a unit, so $352,000 that can be used for whatever the city feels fit from an infrastructure standpoint. It does not have to be done on our site. It's anywhere where you guys feel the need. I think as developments come in and grow, I think we need to help get back a little bit on our end as well and make sure that we're taking care of those roads and everything else that are out there. So that's one thing that we voluntarily elected to do. And I think it's great for us. And I think it's great for you guys. It's better for Cedar Lake as a whole. The other thing I'm highlighting in this particular plan would be, I guess I should say some of the unusual things. We work with staff to find a way to prepay certain fees if things got increased, and that's only regarding sewer and water, so that we can plan a business way that way. So in the worst case scenario, if fees went up $5 grand overnight or something like that, we wouldn't pay all fees at that particular time for the sewer and water. It's only limited to sewer and water, nothing anything of that nature. So it's just an option that we generally try to do when we're trying to put business plans. So this gives us that flexibility. We originally tried asking for, but after talking to staff, we realized that Prairie Village just doesn't make sense here. So we're no longer asking for it. Prairie Village was an opportunity for us to start putting foundations in the ground before the roads were built. But based on secondary plats and everything else, I kind of understand their point of view on it and why that is very difficult for them to manage. So we're just not going to ask for it. So we're just going to stick by the normal rules of the game here and put those foundations in the roads and everything else. So that was one of the things from the planning commission that we since elected to pull on after having discussions with staff. I think that's really the crux of it there.
Mr. President, I'd like to address the town attorney.
You most certainly can. Thank you.
So in this case, like the last one, we would need to consider the PUD as its own separate consideration item with the contingencies listed in the PUD contract, and then the contingencies that you made a part of the record would be a part of the ordinance consideration. Is that correct?
That's my recommendation.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other council members have any questions or comments? I have one for Mr. Austin. The plan unit development contract for Rose Gardens that's in our packet tonight is the one that we will be following. Is that correct? I know there's been some changes to it and that sort of thing.
Yes, John, it has been an evolving document, as I've reported to you over the past week, especially. But yes, the answer to that is yes.
And Scott, I do have a question. When do you anticipate I know you're going to be dedicating a lot of time, resources, energy to working with our staff and our engineers that are on staff. If you had to guess on a timeline, what would you estimate?
That's when we'll be back for plat approval and all that.
Yes, yes.
I think May at the earliest, right? I think May 15th at the earliest. We'll be back.
May at the earliest?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the PUD contract with the contingencies listed in our packet, some of which were highlighted by the gentleman.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve by Randy, a second by Greg. Any other comments from any?
I have a comment, as you highlighted, and it's the first time we've seen this in Cedar Lake where a developer has come voluntarily to add to the stake in the community, the investment in the community, the $1,000 per unit. That's a huge deal. I mean, if every developer did that in this town, we're always kind of scrambling even for public safety as community grows, trying to keep up with things, because the collection of money is always so far in the back end when it comes to property taxes, and the town only gets 24 cents of the dollar of the property tax money anyways. So for you to come up front with cash, to me, says a lot about your commitment to the community. So I want to say thank you to that. I hope some other developers take note and become a part of our community like you're attempting to do. So you're really kind of laying some anchor here in Cedar Lake, and that's a good thing.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
We're very excited to be here, and we're hoping that this is one of many projects.
Any other members? That being said, roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan,
I'm going to say no because I just printed a 37-page document on this and have not had an opportunity to look at it.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer.
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
No. Motion passes 5-2.
Mr. President, I'd like to
Yes.
make a motion on ordinance number 1319.
Okay.
That's inclusive of the recommendations read into the public record by the town attorney.
Very fine. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second on the comments read in to the record by the town attorney,
I have a question.
making it
Mr.
inclusive.
President.
Yes, sir.
It's been brought to my attention, you guys are a nationwide builder, is that correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
Cover the whole country. So there has been some chatter and rumors, and rather than allow these things to be talked about behind everybody's back, I'll just ask you. It's been said that once you guys get approval, that you will build to the lowest possible standard allowable under the code. Is that true?
That is not true. If you look at our prediction, our product that's attached to it and our price points, I mean, for the record, I mean, we're averaging, right now, our lowest single family house, the base price is gonna be $276,990. Our most expensive is gonna be $330,990. And we're gonna be pushing price point here in Cedar Lake. On the age targeted, we're gonna be anywhere from $228 to $260 with an average of $244 on the ranch villas. The duplexes are gonna be, again, right at that $244 average on that. So we're gonna be anywhere from $240 to $250 on those duplexes. And the townhomes will be pushing anywhere from $190 to well over $200,000. So, I would say that's an absolute false statement. I mean, we're pushing the product here. The other side loads are something we've never built before. We've never built them in Illinois. We've actually got them out of, we started in Colorado, then Minnesota, then Indianapolis. This is the first community that we're going to build those on. They are not cheap to build. They're much more expensive than our standard duplexes that go probably around $9,000 or $10,000 a unit. So I would say that's a very false statement.
Well, I would have been remiss to not ask the question right to you.
No, I'll always give you an honest answer, trust me.
Well, I like that. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay. I think we've already had the roll call, and it was,
No, we
oh, that was for the
We
first.
got a
Now we
motion
need to
and
do
a
it for the second motion made by Randy. So roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yeah, that's to read in what the attorney stated.
That's for the adoption of ordinance 1319 with the contingencies recommended by the town attorney.
Okay, so it's adding to the 1319.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I'll vote no
Greg
for the
Parker,
same reason.
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
No. Motion carries 5-2. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. We look forward to being back here in May.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Too many notes on. It's insane with the second motion. I need more space. Moving through the agenda, the BZA items. Item number 1, Nancy Healy, 13125 Lakeshore Drive. There was a use variance. Board of Zoning Appeals certifies a favorable recommendation to the town council for the requested use variance to allow the petitioner, Nancy Healy, to have all 4 tables and 16 chairs for outdoor dining and alcohol contingent on an additional 10 parking spaces being secured off-site for employee parking only, or dining privileges will be revoked by a vote of 4 in favor and 1 against upon motion duly made and seconded at the public meeting that was held on February 14th, 2019.
Do we know who?
Jill,
the-
did I miss
This is
anything?
Rosati's.
This is,
I'd like to know who the one person that voted against it and why they voted against it.
let's
You're
look
calling
and
them out,
see.
Bob?
No, I just want to know. That's not in the,
I don't remember.
Do you know, Tim?
Jeff Bunny voted against it and didn't have an explanation of why.
all right.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I would like to make a motion to approve this use variance. We want to be a tourist destination and somewhat of a resort feel community, for God's sake. So
Yes.
outdoor dining by the lake makes a lot of sense.
And are you in agreement with the number of parking spots? That seems a little bit steep to me. I don't even know that they would employ so many people. And in addition to that, I wouldn't want to change anything from what the Board of Zoning Appeals considered. I think what they did, their due diligence on this thing, I don't have a problem with what their recommendation is. okay.
John,
Yes, Mr. Usher.
having been at the hearing,
Yes.
they vetted that parking thing hard. They explored where the building up the hill was, the distance for people to walk, how the traffic patterns were in their peak periods. I mean, there was a lot of discussion about that,
I see.
which is why the revocation part became so important in the event of a change.
Understand.
Last year, I went down there and I came down the side street to go pick up a pizza, and there was a delivery truck there, and I got stuck on that road for 20 minutes because the manager came out and the delivery guy wouldn't move, and I had to sit there and wait till he got his delivery completely out of that truck and then go get my pizza.
Bob, one of the BZA members had the same exact experience. They were there for a pickup and had a road blockage because of a supply vehicle. They talked about that for sure. Fair, it's a very fair comment.
Okay, we have a motion on the table by Randy regarding 13125 Lakeshore Drive. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Greg. Any other council member comments?
Is that with conditions?
Yes, I concur. Conditions.
Per my reading of the,
Yes, it's my motion's with conditions.
okay. With conditions set forth by the BZA.
Yes, sir.
I
Thank
concur.
you. Thank you, Greg. Roll call vote, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes, and I hope they take care of that problem.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Item number 2, Frank Ponziano, owner, petitioner Joseph Sawinski, 10,800 West 133rd Avenue, use variance again. I will read through it for the public. The Board of Zoning Appeals certifies a favorable recommendation to the town council for the requested use variance to allow petitioner Joseph Sawinski to operate 2 businesses, a real estate office and mortgage lending office on lot in a B1 zoning district contingent on parking lot improvements completed within 6 months by a vote of 5 in favor and 0 against upon motion duly made and seconded at the public meeting held on February 14th, 2019. Any comments, Jill or
Mr. Sawinski's here.
Mr. Sawinski's here? If you'd like to take the podium, please.
Sure.
I have a question. The building is the one next to La Gaviota, correct?
Yes.
Are you going to be making like some improvements to the facade or some things like that?
Yes, I will.
Okay. That's kind of an older building and we're seeing some things upgrade and improve, and I just wanted to know if you had intention of pepping it up a little bit.
Absolutely. It will be over time. I want to get in
Sure.
there and get it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Got to start turning some revenue.
You got it.
I get it.
Any other comments by anybody? Would you like to tell us what you're up to since you're standing here and
Sure.
for the record?
Sure. I operate in a mortgage company and a real estate company in Mokina, Illinois. And I wanted to come out here. I really like Cedar Lake and open a branch office of each in Cedar Lake. It seems as though there's many residents moving this way to Cedar Lake and the surrounding area. So we're just trying to help service our customers. And I think the location is great. I think we're hoping to be a good asset to the community.
Very good.
What were the parking lot improvements that the BZA outlined, Mr. Austin?
There are parking spaces on the west side of the building that will be improved to town code, not immediately, I think over a 6-month period. They talked about the discussion of the BZA was for a circular traffic pattern around the north side of the building for safe ingress, egress onto 133rd or off of 133rd, as the case might be. Then there was discussion about the parking on the east side of the building being against the building facing southbound so that there was not a blind access to 133rd. generally speaking, I think that's what was talked about.
I thought Lagoviota owned the parking on the east side.
There's like a little strip, 13 feet,
Yeah,
where you would put 2 employees up in there.
Okay.
Employee parking, just.
So you won't be using those parking spots where Lagoviota, you're going to go in
No.
between theirs
Yeah,
and just
there's
have a
separate
couple
parking,
employees
where you
parked
can
there?
put a couple of employees with mortgage company. And then there's 3 spots where the existing parking lot is on the west side of the building. We'd add another 3 behind that in the grassy area right now. I think that'll probably be adequate for, maybe you have 4 to 5 employees maximum over time in the building. And people come and go, they're gonna come one at a time. It's not like.
That's right.
a large-
Very good. Okay, do we have a motion? In favor or against?
Make a motion to approve the petition use variance.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Julie Rivera, second by Ralph Miller.
With the stipulations.
Julie, same with you.
With the stipulations stated.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 7-0. I think that's a great 2 types of businesses there, and good luck to you.
Good luck. It's been vacant a
Yeah,
while.
best wishes. Thank you.
Item number 3, Kubiak Development, 13135 Lakeshore Drive, special use variance. Board of Zoning Appeals certifies a favorable recommendation to the town council for the requested special use variance to allow the petitioner, Kubiak Development, to operate a general contractor's office with indoor storage only for construction business. By a vote of 5 in favor and 0 against, upon motion duly made, seconded by a public meeting held on February 14th, 2019. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this? For those of you who don't know, this is the old Aaron Farmer building that's catty cornered from the Eagles, I believe. Okay. With nothing, no questions, do you have anything,
No,
Mr. Oster?
it was very straightforward.
Okay. With no questions, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the recommendation from the BZA for a special use variance.
Motion made by Greg Parker,
I'll second.
second by Julie Rivera.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
is this a building owned by our staff member, Mr. Kubiak?
That's a good question. Mr. Kubiak,
I own 50% of it.
Okay, I just
Thank
wanted to
you.
make sure that we are being transparent, that this is not a secret here, that you own part of it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Basically, it's just to park stuff indoor there. It's nothing more than what it is currently. We just want to fix it up and clean it up and make it look
Okay.
nice for town.
Thank you.
And I do believe he signed a conflict of interest statement at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, he did.
That's correct.
That was approved.
Okay, very good.
With conditions, John?
Greg and Julie, would you both be willing to agree to the conditions that were set forth?
I
Yes.
concur.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Moving on to new business, contract agreements. Christopher B. Burke Engineering LTD. What page is that on,
Page
Jill?
47.
Thank you.
You got a little time.
Page 47. Jill, did you want to give us a synopsis of this?
This is your annual master service agreement with Christopher Burke Engineering. They provide our multitude of services, pretty much everything besides water and wastewater for the town. There have been no changes in the costs that they provide those services to us.
Okay.
And Don is here if you had any questions on the agreement.
So the fees are the same as previous? All right.
Yeah, it's listed there on the bottom of the first page, Bob. maintain the same scheduled charges as our initial agreement in 06.
It's our recommendation you approve the agreement.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions regarding the contract agreement from Burke Engineering? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Rick.
I'll second.
Motion by Rick Sharp, second by Julie Rivera. Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Greg Parker,
Yeah.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julia Vera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. We have another contract agreement. This one is for Nice Engineering. Probably located on page 63, I guess.
Page 60.
60. You
This
want to
is-
give us an
The
explanation of
synopsis
this?
is this is your annual Nice Engineering for professional engineering services. Work includes working directly with town staff, similarly, primarily sanitary and water utility projects, but could include any other work as directed by town for plan commission review as far as sanitary and water go.
Okay.
Rates are the same as they have been.
Any questions from anybody on the council regarding Nice? Very fine. We can entertain a motion, please.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to deny the contract agreement with Nice Engineering pending the first action and seating of our utility board, which is in the process of being created. I think that utility board should be able to take action on a utility engineering firm. That's my
Okay.
motion.
Randy's made a motion for denying until the utility commission board is put forth. Do we have a second?
Instead of denying, should we defer this, maybe?
Well, he's got a motion on the table, so we'll see if it falls with lack of a second or not.
They're constructively the same. Deny or defer means you're not acting on it tonight. If that's.
And by default, any services we would have with them would be the same as what we're working with them today.
Absolutely.
I'll second his motion.
We have a motion to deny at this time by Randy, a second by Greg Parker. Roll call?
Robert Carnahan,
Wait a minute, I'm a little confused. Now, okay, if we deny it, is that like we're tabling it for longer or are?
It basically means that the one-year contract would not begin. Therefore, any existing business, I would imagine, I don't want to speak for Randy, would be continuing on in the manner that it has been. That's the way I interpret
Currently,
it.
we use their services kind of on an à la carte basis.
Water and sewer primarily.
Water and sewer is the primary uses, so like the water tower project that's being worked on, when Neil does work on it, he bills the town for the work he does on it. That wouldn't be any different. It just wouldn't be a contractual agreement. It would still be an à la carte, utilizing a vendor like we would any other vendor. But it would give the utility board an opportunity to discuss and kind of develop our own set of objectives as a utility board to put the people in place that we think, and it may be Nice, it may be somebody else. But that's why I made that motion, was to give us an opportunity to vet that utility portion of what we do, because it's probably the most important growth item that we have in the community, is that utility infrastructure.
My second was just to get it to a vote.
And the utility infrastructure is absolutely important, especially after.
Right, and
There's no
since
question about it.
we're commenting on this, we've had very slow movement in that area with our current consultant. I think that the performance has been less than stellar.
Very good.
And also, we're going to be the utility board.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's going to come right back to us.
It will.
Okay.
Okay, well, with that all being said, we will ask for a vote, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Greg Parker,
No.
Ralph Miller,
No.
Randall Niemeyer,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
No.
Julie Rivera,
No.
John Foreman.
No. Motion fails to pass by a 4-2 margin.
5-2.
5-2 margin, thank you. Okay, so that motion did not pass. I would entertain another motion, either to approve and/or to defer, if anybody so chooses.
How long is the contract for?
It typically has been a year contract.
I'll make a motion to give them a contract for 6 months and see what the their activity is like.
A motion to approve the Nice Engineering contract for a time period of 6 months from today or from January 1st, sir?
From today.
Okay, motion from 6 months as of today's February 19th meeting.
I'll second.
Greg's got the motion on the table. Julie Rivera's got the second.
Comments, Mr.
Any
President?
comments? Thank you.
Yes, sir. So over the last few years, part of my reasoning for what the motion I made, part of the last few years, we've had water utility and sewer utility items on the table, talked about in public meetings. And our utility consultant has taken those items and really done not much of anything with them until we've poked to the point where it's undeniable that, hey, come on, let's go, take some action. So we spend years of time planning and plotting and not acting. And I know the service we've gotten with the Burke firm and some others that we've worked with over the years, there is a definite action-oriented approach to discussions in town council meetings and plan commission meetings, that people aren't sitting on their hands waiting for a fire to be lit under their rear ends. So I want to make sure as part of this record is that people consider, and I appreciate Greg's motion for being a shorter time period, because we have some utility items right now that are being considered in Indianapolis that so far I think our consultant's done a really poor job on, put us in a position where our consideration might not go through and could hamper some of our utility expansion that we've talked about. So these are things that I think we can't ignore anymore when it comes to the consultants that we hire.
Mhm.
Performance is something that should be expected for the taxpayer and ratepayer money that's spent on these items. And we just haven't seen those results out of it. Wicker Meadows is a great example as well. Don has worked on some stormwater there. We also had Neil there. And it's just kind of been an never-ending kind of project. So things that regard utilities, we need a lot better focus on this when it comes to action. And sewer and water are those two things that just kind of get under my skin, because these developments that are coming in are going to require that type of consideration.
I think
Very fine.
your motion and my motion kind of do the same thing, but it's not as drastic, and maybe let's get his attention. That's all we're
I chose
after.
to take the hard line on it, but I appreciate your motion, Greg.
Very fine. Roll call. We have a motion and a second.
Robert Carnahan,
No.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer,
No.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes. Motion carries 5-2. Thank you. Moving into reports, town council. Does any town councilman or women have any?
We got one more
reports?
item,
Yeah,
the
John, you got one
Seabell
more.
proposal for Highland subdivision.
Sorry about that. I wrote my motion in the wrong spot. Thank you. Christopher B. Burke Engineering, a proposal for Highland subdivision improvements. Don, if you wanted to make a couple of comments, or Jill, if you would please do that for us.
A quick history is we had realized doing the High Grove subdivision project that there was a section to the north there left off of the project and has been left off of other projects the town had previously done.
Mhm.
So we enlisted the help of Christopher Burke to come up with a proposal on doing those improvements. One of the things we realized we need to do in the area was some survey work. So we had originally brought a proposal to you and then said, no, let's hold on. We need to do the survey work. And this is the results of that. So
Okay,
this is where we are.
very good.
And in the second paragraph, it describes the roads that he's talking about.
Yeah, in the contract, that's correct. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I would say we had, most of those residents came in here and wanted to know why we were doing all the roads except that one. And we thought that was part of the package and we discovered it wasn't. So we told them we'd try and do something so we at least have something before us right now.
Very good.
Fixed.
And my compliments to the engineering team at Burke for the two projects that were completed. I know that roads are not your specialty, but with the underground stuff that was put in there and how those things are working now, it's a pretty darn good product. So you should be proud of that. And I hope that this next one is the same quality.
Council Don and Tim have worked diligently to I won't say it, skinny it up as much as possible. Value engineering is one of the things you as a council had discussed on this. The cost for this design
Thank you.
is $59,950. It's anticipated the design will take up to 12 weeks.
Okay,
That's our recommendation. You approve this
very fine.
proposal.
So moved.
Motion by Bob Carnahan,
I'll second it.
second by Greg Parker. Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Greg Parker,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer.
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
John Foreman.
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Now I'd like to run into the item reports. Town council, does anybody have anything that has not been covered?
I would,
Go ahead, Bob, I'm
I
sorry.
would like to let everybody know that Bob's Auto Group on 41 will be having an open house this Friday. And I think it starts at 6 o'clock. And they're going to have food and stuff to give away. And I guess they're going to raffle off a 2006 van. And all the proceeds is going to Project Love Food Pantry.
Very good.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask Mr. Austin, and actually, I'll probably need some foresight from you on this too, Bob, if you don't mind. Mr. Austin, in 2007, there was a huge road project taken on this town, Moore Street, some of the main thoroughfares. You remember, Bob, the heat scarification?
Yes. What, I'll elaborate on it a little bit.
Sure.
We took and heat scarified 4 miles of roads. And what we did, they heated the road up to like 700 degrees, and then they had another unit behind it, and I think it was 800 degrees. They laid that back down. We also widened Lakeshore Drive by about 2 feet. And what we did after they heat scarified it, then we put a top surface on the top. And that cost us $800,000.
Which was a pretty fair price for what they got for the time. My question is when those bonds, or was it a bonding that had, was
I
it?
think we did finance that. There were building corp or redevelopment authority bonds.
Redevelopment, I think.
Yeah, I think it was redevelopment authority.
I don't remember how it was financed, or I don't know how it was financed. I just know that there was
there was debt service.
Right.
And then when those things got paid off, that debt service got allotted out of the general fund to something else, whatever we were using to pay those bonds, that money, those monies. And I know we've got some road bonds out now, and we certainly got a heck of a lot of work still to do. So is there any way just to create some kind of a policy that when we get a project paid off, that whatever funds that are funding that project automatically generate and go into another project, rather than adding to departments or things of that nature? Because I just feel like if we don't have a long-term plan to continue with our infrastructure improvements, every time something gets paid off, I mean, whatever idea comes up to add to this or add to that, then the road projects will continue to fall by the wayside.
Well,
And I think we need to do that section from Lakeshore, by 133rd and Morse, all the way past your place, because that is crumbling bad again.
I'm kind of leading up to that and a few other things.
Okay.
Basically what I want to do is create an environment where the funding is consistent as these road projects that are already financed pay off.
I represent communities that do exactly that. They have short-term financings every other year or every third year, and they have it calculated and computed so that when they finish that debt service, which resulted, of course, in public infrastructure improvements, that they automatically roll down the list. And you have a list. I think Dot and his team did it.
Well, it was VS did the asset management
Okay, well,
list, so we
we've
do
had
have that.
engineering check off on a priority, and I know it's in Jill's office somewhere, that, your roads kind of identify themselves when they're picked out in condition status or listing by your professionals, and you can absolutely do that.
That's exactly the environment I'm looking for. I guess what I need from you is a vehicle to get us there, and then if we need whatever action we need to take on it.
Well, there's a little bit of help needed from you and probably Jill and team, and that is finding the list, getting an engineer estimate of the cost down the list, and then an identification of the financing against that list to see what is able to be tolerated for debt service by the general fund, if it's a redevelopment authority. For Morse Street, you've got to look at, in my opinion.
We need to figure out a way to do that.
Well, you've got to
So-
look at TIF funds for that. You took your TIF district all the way down to 146, you turned it to the right to Cedar Lake, there for a short distance, and you can clearly use TIF
What about the
funds.
gas tax
And
that was implemented here recently by the state? When does that come back to?
I think that's going to the
Community.
community grant funds.
That's road monies are in the
that's
community.
the
Community
grant,
crossings.
the grant that Jill got, community crossings, that's a gas tax.
DCG.
Okay.
So that is something that next year we could apply for through that, but I brought it up at the RDC meeting last night, Greg, about Moore Street. And Nathan agreed to make that an agenda item immediately for TIF consideration, since it is part of our TIF district.
That'd be great. That solves that, but we still have 60 other projects that need
Yeah,
to be
it
done.
doesn't necessarily solve it, because we do have some cash flow commitments through our TIF.
And see, that's what I'm trying to avoid. The amount that we have financed right now, there's always going to be a department head or a department when something pays off, or even a clerk treasurer or a town administrator possibly, that says, well, this is paid off, we can use that revenue over here. And then there's no revenue to continue with. I guess I'm just trying to create a fail-safe for the future.
So,
And I had asked if we could heat scarify that again, and I was told we could.
I think there's a lot of options, Bob and Greg, both with this, and for Jill as well, to put that on a project for the community crossings grant. And you combine that with some TIF capabilities, we can really shrink our local commitment on something like that to be able to better spread out our general fund and RDA bond commitments on some of those other projects you're talking about, so we have a consistent mechanism that we're using. And so far, the state's been very good with this gas tax money at making sure communities get their share of it. So
Getting it and getting it where it needs to be, though, sometimes can be two different things.
And you've got to complete a project before you can apply for another project.
which Moore
That's
Street would be the
that's
perfect
incentive
one,
to
the
hustle,
perfect timing.
Yeah. I would like to commend Tim. We haven't over the past years maintained the roads that we have done. And he went out and he got a regular crack sealer. And they're going to be aggressive in the spring and get out there and crack seal a lot of these roads that are cracked. And that should help maintain them in the future, so we won't have to be working on them rather quickly again.
Yeah, they've done a good job with that.
Yeah.
I just want to add, Dave, so our inventory list that we have now, is that good enough to get us started down that
I would
path?
think it is. I
It
think,
is being, actually, you enlisted VS Engineering. I anticipate having that report back by your next meeting.
Okay, so then what will we need to do?
And then we'll
Yes.
prioritize from that list and review it.
will they have cost estimates against?
Yes, cost
Yeah,
estimates are
identify.
part of your asset management plan.
Okay. That's a great start, Greg. That's
And one of the
foundation.
things with the asset management plan is not just reconstruction of roads, it's also the maintenance of the roads. So what we
Well,
would
I
need to
mean,
budget for annually to help maintain them. And
Could
then
be
one of the
various- Could be a
things,
number of things. I mean, just as long as there's a commitment to fund things as things get paid off. That's kind
and
of,
one of the things you guys did with your last round of bonds for road projects, as one set of bonds was rolling off of tax rolls, the new one was coming on. So there was in effect no change. There wasn't like a drop in property taxes, then an increase. We were eliminating that roller coaster effect for your residents and maintaining that level. So that was one of the things that you all had considered prior to me even working for the town, was as one bond rolled off, you were kind of rolling those funds, so.
Mr. President, can we add that to our living document and kind of see that through in the next couple of months?
We can do it.
President, I have a couple reports.
Okay, go ahead.
I attended the Lake County Election Board meeting today. In that board meeting, it was decided, due to the lack of contested races in Cedar Lake, as well as 4 other communities, that there will not be a primary in the town of Cedar Lake, which saves the town money out of our general fund as part of that commitment to elections. You can state what the savings are.
Hard costs were estimated around 9,000, but once you add in early voting locations, personnel, and the like, it was estimated closer to $15,000.
But there, thank you. There will be still, a public question was approved by the Board of Elections for the Hanover Community School Corporation. There's consideration of a property tax referendum this year, which would be held on what would be the normal primary date within the Hanover Township voting locations. That is something that would be the responsibility of the school corporation at this point, since the Board of Elections voted to not have a primary election in the town of Cedar
You
Lake.
have a better understanding of that, and I'm sorry for the interruption, but
Oh,
you
that's
have a
fine.
better understanding of that than I do. Why wouldn't the school corporation just wait till the November election to do that, rather than spend a lot of money on the same thing's gonna happen?
I don't know if I can give you a functional answer, because I'm
Well,
not.
what would the election board say about it? I mean, why would they allow them to have a primary for a question when there's an election in November, no matter what?
I think a lot of it has to do with budget cycles. So like for us, we got to have all of our stuff submitted and approved by the end of October and submitted. So if they have a property tax referendum in November, then it's not until the following budget cycle that they can start to enact that stuff and then start to collect tax monies after that. So I think that's the functional reason. I can't speak on it 100% factually, but I think that's why they go for the May date rather than the November date.
That's-
And a May date in a primary that's municipal, I mean, let's face it, the voting turnout's going to be 10 to 15%. And when you have to capture 51% of a smaller percentage of people, it's an easier thing to pass when there's less of
and
an
I guess
audience.
that's the kind of thing that no matter what government entity it is, it tends to frustrate me because it's sneaky from a regular
Well, they're following,
taxpayer position. When people have a reason to go to the polls, they go to the polls. And when we're not having a primary for an election cycle, no one's going to, or I would say the regular amount of people is not going to show up to answer that question like they would for an election. And primaries sometimes get ignored anyway. These things should be held in the general election. It should be kept. And I'm not calling anybody your crook, but it's just not a good position for anybody that represents the entirety of the populace to take that kind of stance on something, in my opinion.
well, I know the state legislature over the last couple of sessions has had discussions and committee hearings on legislation that deals with when public questions can be considered. I'm not sure of the progress of the current proposals that are down there. I haven't really checked on those. I've been paying more attention to the municipal stuff. But all I can say is that the schools are following the statute that's available to them at this time. There is a public forum at Hanover Central tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. in the auditorium. So for those that kind of feel like you do, or maybe feel different, I think it'd be good for people to go there and
I live in
speak.
Center Township, so it doesn't affect me at all
Right.
what goes on in Hanover Township. I just don't like the premise of it. I'm not trying to not fund anything that needs to be funded. I just think that they need to have a better program or a better platform to do things than to have a special primary date just to have a question answered when everybody's going to be at the polls in November anyway that are going to vote. So that's.
Thank you.
It's a valid opinion. One more report, Mr.
Absolutely.
President.
I have a quick question about
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
Are the polling places going to be the same for Hanover Township?
Polling
residents?
places will be a part of the list that was approved by the county election board in the state, so none of that will change.
Very
Yeah,
good.
it's not going to be like selecting different polling places, so all that's approved through the election board.
Greg, if it's any, I tried to get my wife to run against me. She's been trying to take me down, but she wouldn't do it, my man. We could have had a competition.
Forgive me, John, but I don't even
I'm
know why
kidding.
my wife puts up with that.
So one
Yeah,
more-
is this the first time that's happened where we've not had a primary? I've never heard
it's
of it.
first
No,
time in a
we-
while.
Yeah, it's been a long while.
That's pretty unbelievable.
But there's no contested races on the Republican or Democrat
Right,
side,
right.
and that is the discretion of the county election board of whether or not to hold the primary.
Yeah, I've never heard about that before. News
One
to
more
me.
report is I was a part of a conference call with the OUCC regarding our system development charge for the water utility improvements, the water tower here on the east side.
Mhm.
Part of the reason I brought this out about the contract agreement with Nice is because I was underimpressed with how our consultants prepared us for that call. Now, I'm not saying that we left that call as losers, because I felt like some parts of it went pretty well, but there were parts of it that were clearly overlooked by our financial consultants and our utility consultants.
Wow.
And we've had to do some work on the back end of this to make sure that some of those holes were filled.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping we get a favorable ruling, but it definitely took something that should have been a slam dunk and made it questionable. And I think we need to look at our financial consultant along with our utility consultant as some things to consider on how we move forward with some people we work with.
I see.
Thank you.
You bet. Anybody else? I would just like to say that of all the various years for the last 10+ years I've been doing this, we've never really approved any new subdivisions. Summer winds across from Hanover Central High School. Lots of multifamily was done early 2000s. Union Station, which is now Beacon Point, that was approved 06 or 07. We're working with those folks now to try to minimize the density. The folks on 41 that just got approved tonight, they've reduced some density. I think it's up to all of us up here on the board to really recognize this. There were some blanket PUDs on the east side of town, right across the street here. We're hoping to work with that developer to make it less dense off of the Poor Farm Road. PUD was approved. So I think we have to keep our eye on the ball, pay attention. When talking multifamily, when talking, duplexes, doesn't seem like much until you start seeing them built and built out, and the impacts are felt on the roads and in and around town. But like you had mentioned earlier, Randy, utilities are number one. And once you give annexation approval, you only have 3 years to get the utilities to the people in the event they want to follow the subdivision control ordinance anyway. But I think we as a group just have to really keep our eye on the ball.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Austin, these PUDs that got approved 10 or 12 years ago, if there had been a mechanism in place for an expiration on those, would we be in a better position than we are right now?
Possibly.
Is that something that we could look at going forward, and would that be a plan commission thing because we have to provide services within 3 years if something is annexed and approved? If something's annexed and approved, we get behind the 8 ball. It kind of gets forgotten about if it's not acted on in a certain amount of time. And then we have to double back on top of everything else and make sure that we can provide those services when they didn't do anything for 10 years.
Yeah, there's a mouthful in that. When the annexation process is occurring, there's a fiscal plan that's approved by resolution of the legislative body, you, that makes some very affirmative statements, generally speaking. And most of those affirmative statements have to do with the utilities. And unless there is professional engineering consultation or advice to the contrary, we have, in Cedar Lake especially, assumed that our utility capacity exists. In fact, I don't recall a single annexation in this town where it was determined or declared that utilities were deficient or unavailable. I don't recall one. Bob, do you recall any? So when you look at the growth of the community, that assessment, and Randy's kind of emphasized it tonight in some of his comments, that assessment is incredibly important.
Well, I'm not saying it is. I guess
But
my
that leads
complaint.
into the zoning, and the zoning adds another layer of gatekeeping,
Sure.
if you will, or guidance as to parameters and conditions and requirements and or termination for default or non-compliance. And that's something that could be considered in the zoning context also.
All I'm saying is we have an ordinance that protects a vacant building. If a building is vacant for a certain period of time, it could lose its zoning or its legal use, correct?
It could if the use changes.
Well, a decade is a long time to have something approved on the books and laid dormant. And then someone walk in here and say, okay, I want the same initial agreement that we had 10 or 12 years ago, and I'm waking this thing up. After a certain amount of time, just like the vacant building, if it lies dormant, we should have a mechanism for the zoning to go back and the agreement to be null and void, so we can have a proper continuance of how things get planned. And if someone's willing to make the investment initially to get these things engineered, zoned, and approved, then they need to be prepared to go ahead and build the development regardless of what's happening.
Or post the sureties that permit the construction of the infrastructure by the town, which would.
Well, we did that with Summer Winds Commercial at the Plan Commission, here, if they didn't have it built out in so many years, it defers to defaults
You
back.
actually did it in Lynn's Way and collected the bond and built the roads.
Called the bonds, yeah.
You called the bonds in Lynn's Way on the south end, and you built those roads before those bonds expired. Had you not done that, there'd be weeds all over the place, no road, and no development.
So these contingencies could be added at the plan commission level, and when something is approved, if it's not done in a 3 or 4 year period, or at least started, it's dead.
You could develop language and provisions in your code to do that.
So we'd have to change the code to do that. We couldn't just do
You
it.
have
like-
some protection in your code, but not as much and not to the extent that you're talking about.
Okay. So is that something you need direction to work on, or is that something?
I would. There's no question, but I could tee it up.
There is a 5-year standard that is,
There's a note about a 5-year limitation on there.
We're also looking at sureties.
Doesn't have a lot of teeth.
yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
have teeth.
Money is what brings people back to the table.
Jill, can you maybe just put this on one of the work session items for the plan commission? That's pretty good idea.
I don't know why we just can't take action on it for him to go ahead and draft some amendment to the code to get us some protection for the future. I mean, there's a lot of things that
It's a plan commission
we should be learning.
product or
Does
project.
the plan
though.
commission have to do that, or to town
Well,
council?
it will end up back here if it's a zoning condition.
But it's connected to
term
zoning, so it
amendment,
should go through plan,
commission will
probably.
Hold a public hearing, it'll come back to you
Right.
with an ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I've got another thing I just thought of. This Friday at the Cherville Town Hall will be the 16 plus, which is the 19 municipalities in Lake County. And we have Janet Romano, who is the executive director of Lake County Solid Waste. She is going to bring her staff and try and explain to what Lake County Solid Waste does. She did replace a previous executive director, and she has done an excellent job. She has cut staff, and she continues to do the job of the executive director and some of the stuff she did with her job.
Great. Thanks, Bob.
9:00 in the morning on Friday at Town of Cherville.
Great. Mr. Austin, do you have anything else?
No report.
Clerk treasurer?
My staff and I are working on getting together the ordinances for the supplement to the town code. It's something we usually do annually or every other year at least, so we'll probably have that.
Codification.
Yeah, I'm anticipating the second meeting in March because currently I'm finishing up the annual financial reports.
Okay. Very good. Okay, I didn't have any written communication in my packet. Jill, did you have any?
The written communication you had is your building report for the end of January,
Okay.
which we had 5 new home permits with a residential value of just over $1,048,150 and 17 alteration permits with a value of $238,618.
Okay.
And then Don has worked very diligently on several applications with NERC. One of those projects, and Don attended representing the town last week, was the King Street and 133rd Avenue intersection safety improvement project.
Mhm.
This is, my apologies. This is the intersection of Hanover Central High School and your Armani Summer Winds residential development. It's a project that has been worked on between the redevelopment commission, plan commission, developers, school board members, school superintendents, and I haven't even gotten a hold of the superintendent at the schools yet to let them know that this was added into the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan by NERC, as a highway safety improvement project. It will be funded at 90% federal, 10% local.
Great.
We did not ask for preliminary engineering money or right-of-way money because we have most of that done. Don can actually report a little more on that if you would like, because he attended the meeting at NERC that I was unable to attend.
Do you have anything else that she didn't already cover, Don?
It's a 90-10, so it's approximately funded. The TIP actually gets approved in May by the full executive board.
Great.
Let me get the actual numbers out here. It would be $548,540.30 with a local share of $78,000 and change.
Great.
Great, good job. Thank
And it
you.
was also programmed for the 2021 tip.
So it's early.
So that's early. Yeah,
Very good.
real early. So
Great job.
you hate to
That'll-
say it by having a slightly smaller project, we were able to be funded.
Chief, did you want to say something?
That
Chief
includes the
Todd?
Opticom, right?
Yes.
Would you kind of explain what you're talking about, light and stuff like that?
I'm gonna let Don explain that a little more. It's a little more detailed than me just.
So yeah, this project's been kind of in the works for the last 3, 4, 5 years now, probably through RDC. They got
More than that. More than that.
Probably more than that. They got
2014, we started that.
Yeah, we did. I think American Construction Point did an initial traffic study for that intersection back then. It has come back up as a result of the school and then also future planning for all the residential subdivisions to the south and summer winds going in. Now Beacon Point PUD has come before planning commission for Beacon West, I guess is what they're calling it. So with the school there, the anticipated growth over the next couple of years for all the residential subdivisions to the south, it makes sense to have some sort of safe crossing for not only those residents, but also the students. So it is a signalized light, decorative, and then, like Jill said, it's actually worked out really well, and it's actually a cheaper project. I know it doesn't seem cheap, but a lot of the other applications that came in for TIP money were too expensive because the current TIP is underfunded. So they're going to kick a lot of the projects that are in the current TIP into the new TIP. So there's actually no money available in 2020 to be the first year of this new TIP. So, and then 2021 was pretty much cut down as well to make up for some of that underfunding of the previous one. So a lot of the cheaper projects, while they may have been scored lower, actually got bumped up because they need to use that money in that year. So a lot of the higher scored projects, for instance, Valpo had a $14 million project. Well, NERC has a standing policy not to partially fund a project because they are obligated to then fully fund it within a certain amount of years. So they kicked up a lot of these kind of smaller projects in the $500,000 range, and those got funded. That's why this one got funded.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, the Lakeshore Drive continuity project that we had, sidewalk project, and then also the Founders Creek project, they did not get funded. Only one project from each one of those two categories, one's a complete streets category and one's a trail category, got funded because the allocation over that 4-year period was, I think, I think 500,000 for complete streets and like 1.6 million for each trail.
So we'll go back, swing again when we can.
I mean, if you weren't the top rated project, you weren't gonna get it.
Okay.
So we did submit a next level trails application on Friday for Founders Creek, which is Founders Creek Trail, which is same exact scope, different funding mechanism. Next levels is a kind of rotating, continuing grant fund over the next couple of years. I think it's $90 million over the next couple of years. This current year, $5 million statewide for locally significant projects, which is what this would be considered. So that was submitted, deadline on Friday. They're going to do their due diligence, their DNR, and then come back in the spring and let everybody know about what's been chosen.
Great.
And there'll be multiple funding rounds for that next level trail program. So we'll
Very good.
continue.
Good job.
Excellent. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, we have a gentleman in the front row moving to public comment. Did you want to state something at the public comment?
Were you going to go to see if the chief or anybody wanted to say anything?
You didn't want to hear from him tonight, Bob.
I can hit him after the end of public comment. Go ahead.
Jonathan Lawton
Mhm.
here on behalf of Jeff and Drunan. Was just kind of looking for a vote to withdraw the agreements with the DNR for that project. And as we talked with
Sure.
you and Randy about you guys having the last say with MS4.
That's correct. So Jonathan, I think the consensus of the group is that we want Don Oliphant to get the necessary paperwork. Mr. Austin, is that correct?
It is.
And have it come to the Plan Commission. So if you could stay in constant contact with Jill, she can kind of play point for you, and then we'll try to get this thing taken care of as soon as possible.
Mr. President, can I speak?
Yes, sir.
So Jonathan, what's kind of hanging out there in information is that internal stuff from the DNR that the town needs to have to be caught up to this thing. Since we started out so far behind, that's why the petition was filed. And so the only thing that Dave is waiting on and Don's waiting on are those internal communications. And I know Mr. Austin's been in contact with the DNR and is awaiting a return contact so we can get those internals. And then at that point, there's no reason to have the petition.
Do you have them?
Just what we originally submitted to the DNR.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can get you guys copies of that.
That's a great place to start.
Yeah, I think that would be a good start, but we still need that internal DNR stuff, so we're totally caught up on the record. That's what.
Yeah,
Mr.
I'm not
Austin's
sure what we
recommending.
need.
There were reviews, there were a number of submissions, 4 or 5 of them, I think, after the first one, based upon comments and concerns of DNR. That's referenced in the permit that they issued to allow construction in the floodway, and that's what we're looking for.
Okay.
So that'll be the action, will be as soon as that information's in the hands of the attorney, there will be no petition anymore at that point.
Okay, so you guys aren't gonna have to vote on it.
No.
No.
Okay.
Get the stuff. Don has it. We
Yep.
can take action.
That's it.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Father John Gavalchik, 10717 West 134th Place, Cedar Lake, Indiana.
Greetings.
A lot of talk tonight was about future developments that are already approved, 300 houses in this development, 400 houses in this development. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that's 700 houses between the developments that you have. At 3 people per house, that's approximately 2,100 extra people to the town of Cedar Lake.
You're off a little bit, but I know where you're going. Let's go.
Okay. I heard about funding for the roads. I am concerned on a number of levels about the funding for the public safety. Both in, funding for public safety, period. If we have more and more people, there's going to be more and more calls. If there's more and more calls, that's more and more people that we need to respond to the calls. Fire, police, EMS, whatever the case may be. I certainly hope that the council and their budgetary considerations and future considerations for how to fund various events keep all this development in mind, perhaps taking advantage of what the one developer said, here's $1,000 for each house, to at least use some of that money to fund additionally the public safety of our town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, can I speak to some of Mr. Kowalczyk's comments? Father John, those are great comments, and Lennar came here today with, like you had mentioned, that willingly putting that money forth to be used for whatever we deem necessary. One of the encouraging things that we're starting to see with our growth, it hasn't come to full fruition yet, but just this past year, both the fire department and police department's budgets grew. Maybe not by enough, maybe it's never enough. But every year we're seeing some growth, and we're actually kind of catching up to ourselves finally, to where Jen made the announcement a couple meetings ago that for the first time in quite a while, we haven't had to borrow from ourselves to stay afloat in cash flow to start the year. So you can see things are starting to catch up. And I predict that over the next couple of years, you'll see some productive results from some of this growth. There'll still be pressure on every government entity and every department within those entities. But that kind of pressure is a lot better than the pressure that the city of Gary's under, where they've been shrinking for so long, that they close schools constantly. They can't get a business to move in there, and home values are worth nothing. So we have a little better problem on our hands than some other communities do, but your comments are something that I know this council thinks about all the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Father
Very good.
John.
Any other public comments? Once, going twice. Public comment is closed. Chiefs, do you have anything? Apologize about not having you on the agenda.
We can reopen if need be.
He took yours.
I like how you handled that, John.
It's
I thought it was
not
great.
on the document I'm looking at, sir. So nothing from you, Chief Todd, Chief Dave? Okay. Very good. With that, I would like to end the meeting. Thank you.
Next meeting's March 5th.